Welcome to Leap into Livestream. My name is Dawn Chubai, and if you are a business owner who wants to future-proof your business, you want to reach new customers, you want to sell to new customers, we're going to introduce you to an emerging strategy. We're talking live, video, and social commerce. Hit that subscribe button so I can continue to bring you great content from experts like today's guest, Carolyn Galvin, who is a former broadcast executive and head of content for Today's Shopping Choice, which is Canada's TV home shopping network. She's also been an early adopter of live stream shopping. She is the founder of Clikit Media, which is a full service video commerce agency. Carolyn, an exciting time in the world of commerce. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn, for having me. It's great to be here.
So I'd like to take people back to before you started up with Clikit Media. Let's start from the beginning of your experience when it comes to retail.
Yeah, so my experience with retail started when I took over the content and broadcast department at TSC. My background is live production, and then I went over to TSC to manage the broadcast team, and that's where I really got a true taste of retail. I'd never worked in retail before, and live selling, and how exciting and just in the moment, live selling is. And then from there is when we, did a little bit of a proof of concept into live stream selling digitally, which you and I, worked on a couple of projects together.
It's probably not a bad idea to sort of even give some insight to traditional retailers who maybe have never experienced the world of TV home shopping, what the opportunity is in reaching people in a one-to-many format.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great question, Dawn. And I think until I worked at TSC, I didn't really understand the true power of live selling. And we talk a lot about video commerce, in this moment right now in retail, but there is such a powerful connection that viewers get with a presenter on camera when it's live, right? It's much more authentic. The connection is, they're with you in real time. And I think the other thing that I came to appreciate about TV home shopping was the power of being able to bring the store to the consumer when they can't be in the store themselves. And this is what you and so many of your colleagues did so well, was bringing that product to life through a screen. And it didn't matter what the product is, jewelry, fashion, home goods, cooking, kitchen products. It's that bringing that customer into the moment where they can discover the product, learn about the product, through a screen. And I think live lends itself to really catapulting that, and enabling that, live stream selling, that live selling component, or we used to call it story selling, right?
We'll get maybe to some of that insider strategy, but when I get businesses and retailers, back when I was a host at TSC, they would say, how do I get on? And I always said it's kind of like Shark Tank, like it's actually really difficult to get on. The contracts are crazy. And of
Mhm.
course, the fulfillment is
Yes.
out of this world. So when I bring it now to the opportunity of
Mhm.
commerce on camera, so live video and social, I always say it's a lot easier to do it this way. You might not get the same quantity of returns. You might
Yep.
in the future, but you actually get a chance to still leverage those same advantages as we would see in TV home shopping.
Yeah, and I think it's part of why I started Clikit Media. It's an exciting time where live selling has been democratized, like so much of content production and creator content, and that you don't need a big studio, you don't need a big warehouse, you don't need a big, contract, with a company like TSC, you can do that within the confines of your own business. And also from a production, because that's, a big part of what I offer is production services, but it doesn't also have to be a massive expensive production. It can be if that's, what your brand, you want for your brand or your budget allows, but it can also be, as we've seen in so much, live selling, is that it can be an iPhone and a ring light, or it can be something in between. It really is bespoke to the brand. And so that's what I think is so exciting for brands, is the point of entry isn't so daunting anymore, and it isn't such a massive commitment financially. So it's a great time to start it for sure.
There's definitely a range, right? Like you said, you can kind of do it totally guerrilla style,
Yeah.
holding your phone and a product, and then you can go right to something that is more produced. And so there is absolutely a format and
Yes.
style for everyone and a budget that can, I think, fit into anybody's strategy, whether it's small or
Mhm.
larger. But Carolyn, I think it's also important to note that just because something looks raw and spontaneous doesn't mean that there isn't plans. So, for any business that's looking at engaging in live stream shopping, what would you say their first step should be?
Yeah, I think the first step should be, really sitting down and thinking about what is the objective of live shopping? Like, what do we want it to do? Is it a conversion tool? Is it to engage with your customers? It isn't, unless you're using an influencer strategy, it's less top of funnel, it's less brand awareness. It really is about making a connection, midway through that customer journey with your customer, and then, taking them through to purchasing. But you're right, Dawn. I think, if something looks really slick and well, sorry, the opposite of that, if it looks super organic, really you need a plan. You can fire up your iPhone and go live, but it's probably not the best plan of attack. I think being prepared, planning, and that's everything from your merchandising and pricing strategy down to what's this production going to look like. And it doesn't need to be a, word for word scripted, what we would call a rundown or a lineup. But you do have to go in with a plan of how you're going to move through the flow of that half hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of your show. And then you add the fun in, which is a live component where things can go wrong. And that's the spontaneity, but the backbone of it really does need to be solid, I think.
Well, imagine going on a road trip and going, okay, we're just going to wing it, and going somewhere that should only take 15 or 20 minutes could take you hours, and it could take you off course when ultimately what you want to get is from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Does that mean you can't sightsee? Of course you can. Does it mean
Yes.
you can't take a little detour because that's what your audience, maybe your passenger, wants?
Yes.
So that's probably the best way I can relate everybody, or maybe express the importance of having some sort of run of show, is it gives you a route. Although
Mhm.
there are many, it gives you one of a
Yes.
few that ensures you take that customer toward that pathway that ultimately we hope leads to purchase. But Carolyn, it can't be, and you just talked about this briefly, about just purchasing. We are really
Mm.
bringing shoppers, viewers, followers, customers on, I'm going to say, a bit of a joyride, a bit of
Mhm.
a reason to sort of connect with us. And that's all about earning your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think before I talk about earning your audience, which I think is it's a great point. When you're on that journey, what is so exciting about live shopping, instead of in the TV home shopping world where you're one to many and broadcasting out, your customer, your viewer, your follower, they're on that ride with you. They're on the journey with you. And I think this is what makes it so exciting for the customer to connect and engage with a brand that way. They're doing it with you instead of just sort of a lean back, they're a lean in and contributing really to the show, when you do polls or questions, or they ask questions about products, so it's really dynamic that way. And you're right. I think there is so much content, there's so much competition for eyeballs on any platform, listeners, doesn't matter, in where we are right now in content creation and consumption. And so I think the other thing is you can't just take for granted that your audience is going to tune into your live. So that's all about, how do I add value in the content that we're creating? Because like you said, the ultimate goal is purchase, but it's not the only goal, and it's not the only objective and lever to pull in a live. And so it's like, what is the content that you're going to create that's either adding value or entertaining for them to watch, so they watch. And in a live shopping strategy, you're ideally committed to doing more than one, so they're going to come back time and time again, and you're going to really build that audience, and then you're really going to see the traction with doing live shows.
You're building a loyalty. You're building kind of that. Back in our day, there'll be a generation that never understands the term must see TV,
Yeah.
but you're kind of creating that kind of environment. And if I can, to anybody that's listening or watching that's sort of thinking about getting involved, whether you're doing it with almost no budget or a bigger budget, you really should consider, I'm going to say, four right out of the gate to schedule on a regular. It's not do
Mhm.
one and then, okay, well, we'll do another one whenever. Make a plan. And whatever that plan is, stick to it, even if it feels like you're not going anywhere. Because, Carolyn, you've done several live streams. I've done several live streams.
Yes.
I'm in the process of producing and merchandising and doing all the things for a big curated event. And with each one, you
Mhm.
learn just a little bit more about what works. And then just when you think it's going to work all the time, you realize, oh, wait, every show, every audience is different, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you're right. You see the build over time, and you learn what works and what doesn't work, but you're also training, live shopping, tuning into live shopping. It's still pretty new. It's certainly in Canada, but in North America, but you're training a new behavior in your customer. And so that also takes time. It also takes time to build that. Like, go back to when TSC first went on the air, or any TV home shopping, people didn't really know what to make of it. So it took time for them to realize, oh, okay, I know what to expect. I know what they're going to do here, whether it's like exactly what they're going to present, but they understand the format. And I think that's important to committing to. It's a lot of work in the initial stages of deciding, okay, I'm going to get into live shopping. As you know, Don, it's a lot of work to get from 0 to 1, right? So 0 to 1 is 70% of the work. You might as well do a couple more, because you've done the heavy lift to, get set up, to figure out the production. So it's almost like at that point, you're kind of coasting downhill after you've done your first one and taking the learnings along the way. And what I can say, we learned from TSC of doing a handful of them in with regularity is, we, even though we were experts in the format, the digital platform has nuance. And so we even learned over time kind of what the customer wanted from that experience and how to leverage that medium. Which is different than what we were doing on TV, slightly different.
So I want to tap into who the talent should be. And the reason obviously I'm a talent trainer. I am a person that is hosted, but I teach other hosts as well. But I remember when we first started doing live stream at TSC, and we don't need to get into the crunching of the numbers. It's more of sort of the idea of who should host, because
Mhm.
we experimented at TSC with very well-known influencers that brought a
Yes,
following.
yes,
We also did just hosts.
yes.
And there's an argument for both, but we can't just assume that 100,000 followers, for example, is going to generate sales.
You're correct. And I think next to the product and the offer, the selection of who's going to host or be on camera for a live stream event is probably the next most important decision to make. And again, that's different for every brand. Like you said, we did cross-category live streams at TSC, and we played around with that formula. And sometimes a founder of a who has a small following might be the best person to talk about that product. Or, it's an expert in kitchen, a chef, but they might not be well known, but they are really good at demo, and so it really is looking at, again, what is that production and live look like, and who is the best person, and also who's authentic and true and aligns nicely with that brand. There is a place for an influencer in a live shopping environment, but then that's where you're pushing more because of the investment to that top of funnel awareness piece. Like, there's a million ways to skin the cat, but it's picking the right one for you, right?
And when I say don't make the assumption that followers generate sales, there is a whole other strategy that has to happen. And I'm going to say, with respect to marketing, do not underestimate pre-marketing, the in-show engagement, and the post-show follow-up. So, for instance, you could have an influencer who's got 100,000 people that follow them, but if they never promote
Mhm.
that they are on that live stream and offer their own marketing plan,
Mhm.
you could produce the best show in the world and you're not actually getting all you want from that influencer, because the reality is that influencer might also not be a salesperson. So now you don't have sales expertise and you're not leveraging their followers,
Yes.
which means you might as well have done it yourself. So
Yeah.
how important is the marketing, and what have been some of the strategies you've utilized with your live streams?
Yeah. So it goes product, offer, host, and then marketing. You've got to get eyeballs onto your live stream, certainly for the live, and then we can talk about what you do post after the live. But it really is, it's the key is, where are the channels that your customer is on? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it your website? And making sure that you're doing an integrated 360, your newsletters. It's different for every company, but where are the places that your customers are engaging with you? And then you need to have a very well thought out. And I think you can't assume that your customer knows what you're going to do. If you say, you've never done one before, and it's like live, it's a live something or other. It's like, I think you need to explain in a simple way in your marketing content what it is that they can expect. And they're very concise CTAs, calls to action. Tune in at this time because you're going to, not the because, but like, it's like, tune in at this time because you're going to see X, and what we're exactly going to show you and do in that time, for an audience that's not used to that kind of content from a brand.
Yeah, so I just have been working on the marketing strategy for my local live stream shopping showcase. And I've got it basically starting from about 2 weeks out. Now, could
Yes.
I start earlier? Yes, but memories are short in this digital
Mhm.
age. Gen Alpha, I mean, they're planning by the minute for sure. So for me, I'm starting that marketing for that. And it starts with, hey, we're doing something exciting. And then a little bit, and, obviously with social as well as newsletters, because we
Yes.
want to tap into their audience. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, here's our offer. Oh, and by the way, you can't shop it unless you get the special link or promo code
Right.
from the live stream, because we're just
Mhm.
doing it on my socials. We're not using a platform, which is a whole other
Right.
different advantage and
Yes.
conversion opportunity. And then it's like, oh, and we've got a giveaway worth $1,000. And
Yes.
here's how you'll be able to enter that. Oh, and extra entries for those that make a purchase. And
Yes.
so, and then an email on the morning of reminding people,
Mhm.
and here's how easy it's going to be to shop. And for the newer brand, expressing their gratitude for coming along on the ride as they tried something totally different than any
Yes.
of their competitors are doing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right. It's almost the whole marketing is a journey too. It's almost like, again, you're starting wide and big. a couple weeks out, and then you're really honing in on what it is they're going to see and the incentive, the incentives for them to tune into it. So, and I do commend any brand, this early and sort of this type of e-commerce sells, is any brand that is kind of taking a bit of a leap and saying, you know what, I am going to try something different. And one thing I truly believe is, AI is something, that is in everywhere you go, people are talking about AI, and certainly in retail and content creation and marketing. And I think that in an AI world, as we get more and more saturated in AI world, I think a live experience is going to be very valuable and a differentiator for a brand as well. Like, it's going to stand out, because it's authentic, it's real, it's live, it's going to feel different than a lot of other things that are out in the market and content that people are seeing.
Well, the world has gotten to be a lot less personal, and
Hmm.
there's no doubt about it. E-commerce has made things incredibly, obviously convenient for people to shop, but you don't have that advocacy in the same way.
Yes.
You don't have the same kind of personal interpretation and
Hmm.
translation of the benefits as they relate to the features, and also navigating the different barriers to purchase and objections that a
Hmm.
customer might have. So, for anyone listening and watching, you really are marrying the best of everything. You're marrying the convenience of e-commerce, but also that personal touch. And
Yes.
especially if you are a brand that has a brick and mortar, I don't think you want to think of this as giving up on your dream of your brick and mortar. You want to look at this as an opportunity to bring more into the fold, into the store without geography being a barrier, but
Mhm.
also to some extent, Carolyn, I think future proofing your business and competing against those direct to consumer customers
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a super important point as well. I feel that sometimes a brick and mortar will feel like, well, if I'm promoting e-commerce, my e-commerce channels, or I'm going live, I'm cannibalizing my brick and mortars business. And I don't think that's the case. And I think the trend that we're seeing in retail is that people want omni-channel experiences, as stores have physical stores and they have, digital stores. People are researching and interacting with brands on multiple channels, which they want. And so it's, they go into a store, they try on a pair of pants, but they don't have the color in that store. So they think, okay, well, I'm going to go home and I'll just buy it online. Or vice versa. You see something online, but you really want to touch it and feel it before you buy it. Then you think, okay, well, I'm going to go into the store. So I think it is very much, and you have to meet people where they're at. And in this modern world, we're in a million different places at a million different times. So yeah, I think it's important to remember that it is very much about engaging a customer in an omni-channel world.
We're looking at, in a sense, and it depends on who's hosting. So if you've got an influencer or an ambassador, it's more of like an influencer or affiliate strategy. If you think of it that way, it's kind of next
Mhm.
level, on like almost like on steroids. And if you are using one of your own brand associates, or perhaps you as the founder, the owner, the formulator, whatever, I mean, what you're doing is you're literally just bringing your message to the masses.
Mhm.
I'm going to just say almost like on social media, because ultimately those platforms. So, again, while I'm doing a few events purely on social media, there is also software available that businesses like you, Carolyn,
Mhm.
are able to help brands navigate as another tool to increase conversion. But it's essentially all kind of like social media on the optics side of things.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, the feeling of what you're doing, depending upon, regardless of the integrations involved from a commerce perspective, it is very much that social live streaming, which, we've seen. I mean, TikTok has just exploded it. I mean, Amazon Live, they've been doing live for a long time. But it is, to go back to what you said before, very transactional. And I think, again, talking about earning an audience, this is when you get to you humanize your brand, you give it a personality, and you're able to, go out there and really bring another dimension to the products, but the brand as well through something like a live stream event.
And again, selling through stories or story selling. I
Story
mean, these are
selling.
all strategies, but then there is also, again, something that you would be able to help a brand navigate are incorporating certain assets, which might be visual or audio
Mhm.
complements, right? Videos, pictures to help that sale. So that maybe you could give everybody a little bit of an understanding of where working with perhaps an agency or a brand like you could really
Mhm.
benefit them beyond holding a phone and going, hey, buy this.
Yeah, I think it's like anything really, especially for smaller businesses. You want to do something you've never done before. You most likely don't have the expertise in-house. And so when you work with or partner with an agency, and again, it's whether it's a media buy, a marketing plan, a live shopping, strategy, it's someone who has a wider knowledge as a subject matter expert who's done it before, who can save you, I think, a lot of pain and aggravation and say, you know what? I've done that. It actually doesn't work that well. Or a brand similar to yours did this and it worked quite well. And so I guess it's that experience. And you're right, Don. Again, there's so many different ways. I think a lot of brands think about just going live, but assets and support material, which is something we would do normally, whether it's product images or brand videos, these are things that also enhance a live and kind of round it out and make it a little bit maybe even more visually interesting and more entertaining, more informative. And so these are the things that someone who's a professional you're going to get to where you want to go, I think, faster, and ideally kind of cut out a lot of the mistakes you're going to make along the way, and get from your starting point to where you want to go in just a much quicker, more efficient way.
Even for people like us who have been doing all of that behind the scenes, and me more now that, of course, I've started live selling school and am producing events, I have a whole new appreciation what merchandisers did, to what script writers did, to what the assistants did who flowed a show. I mean, this might sound like Greek to a lot of people, but it's the stuff that when you just want to worry about engaging with your customers, it's nice to have other people that know how to do it, even though it's still a lot of work, but they also know how to do it right. And for you, Carolyn, when someone approaches you, to be able to hear their own personal goals and what
Mhm.
their brand is, and then formulate a
Mhm.
bespoke strategy. That's key.
Yeah, it is. And I think the way I look at Clikit Media is it's not about Clikit Media. We are very much a white label agency. And so a part of the initial conversations with a brand is really learning about their brand. I don't know their brand, their products better than they do, but it's a lot of what we also used to do, not to keep going back to TSC, but TSC was its own brand. But, in a day we would have 7 different, you know, brands on. And before we even went on air, there was a lot of learning and communication again about what was it they were trying to accomplish, what felt natural to them, what wouldn't work for them. And so, again, that's the if anyone is going to go work with a professional, you really want them to be working with you towards your goals. It's all about the brand's goals. It's not my goals. I really want to passionately help them, be successful. But I need to know about their business and what matters to them and what's true to them before I can even start trying to help them.
And before everyone starts jumping on Carolyn and I for continuing to bring up TV home shopping, let me tell you, they're the OGs.
They are.
half a, half a century. They are the original
Mhm.
influencer. They are the original connect through the screen, the
Yeah.
storytelling, the see, the feel. And you would be silly not to think that you shouldn't look at the past to navigate strategies that, yes, have to still somehow be translated into future technologies. But let's face it, every recipe a modern chef made, Julia Child made it first. The
Yeah.
chef before, Jacques Pepin, did it first. I mean, if you think that whoever, I don't know, Rachel Ray invented avocado toast, come on, people. I mean,
Yeah.
look to the originals, learn, take what you want, and
Yes.
you can completely individualize your experience for your customers. But why do the more work than you need
Yeah.
to?
No, and you know, it's funny. You're so right. And I think one of the things when we started doing live streaming events at TSC, we thought we had to do it totally differently. But you know, really the fundamentals, you're right. The fundamentals are there. Use the fundamentals. And then, you know, add in the things that maybe you want to try something different, or you know, it's a slightly different in a digital you know, world, or you're on multiple platforms. So you know, that call to action looks totally different. So, but you're right. It's not exactly the same, but there is a good base there to work off of. And it would be illogical to not start there.
And I think one of the best things you can do as a brand is, at least as you're taking advantage of some of the free calls, the free consultations that people like Carolyn offer
Yes.
or that I offer, is to go to somebody who has done it first before you just kind of call on anybody. Because the reality is, if you haven't done the job, you haven't done the job.
Oh, you're
So,
right. You're right.
so
And it's
Carolyn,
live. So
yeah.
you can't, once you're live, right? It's hard to fix it in the moment if things are not going well, right? And I think that's the risk. That's the risk of being live, which is why you want to safeguard yourself and your brand for an event.
And it doesn't mean that things can't go wrong, but you're setting yourself up with every advantage. And I mean, ultimately, all of us want you to have a great experience. And there's nothing that sort of sours an experience and makes you not want to go further than something that, didn't go right. And you're kicking yourself because you tried to save a
Yeah.
dollar. And meanwhile, it cost you 100 to
Yeah.
not to not use the professionals.
100%, 100%.
For anyone that wants to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about live stream and what's in it for them working with an agency like yours, how do they do that, Carolyn?
Yeah, they can go to my website, clikitmedia.ca, and you can contact me through there. And yeah, even if people are curious and want to learn more, I have a lot of these discovery conversations because I feel really passionate about it. And I think as more people as I can educate. So, you know, no commitment in a conversation. I'm happy to have those chats with brands. So go to my website and that's how you can get in touch with me.
And of course, all that information is on the screen. Also, be sure to subscribe to my Leap Into Live Stream podcast, where we continue to interview great experts and authorities in this space like Carolyn. And of course, you can check out my website with a ton of free resources for those that want to navigate this space and learn a little bit about live selling at livesellingschool.com. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Dawn. It was great to see you again. Thanks for having me.